The story opens with a high school student named Yeon-do who's constantly getting texts from her stalker. Fed up, she talks about the matter with her best friend, Yoon-ah. We then learn that the stalker is an old classmate named Jin-soo. He is madly in love with her and has confessed his feelings to Yeon-do, which she quickly turned down. But somehow, he managed to get her number. After hearing her out, Yoon-ah comes up with a cunning idea. She suggests that Yeon-do post a picture of a random guy and pretend that he's her boyfriend. Our heroine loves the idea and immediately agrees to it. That night, she scrolls through photos of numerous boys and finally picks one. She then uploads it on her profile, claiming he's her boyfriend. Unbeknownst to Yeon-do, the photo happens to be of Hyun-ho, the bad boy of their school. He's feared by all students because of his daunting looks and angry personality. The next day, Hyun-ho barges into our heroine's classroom and starts complaining about how some random girl posted a picture of him. One of his friends then reveals that he managed to find the girl's phone number and decides to give her a call. Of course, at that moment, Yeon-do's phone begins to ring, making Hyun-ho realize that she's the one behind the whole charade. He angrily confronts her about the photo and demands that she step outside. The teacher then arrives and scolds him for always causing problems. However, Yeon-do covers for him, saying that he was just there to collect her notes. Later, she apologizes to him for using his photo without his permission. She also promises to bring him snacks as compensation. But Hyun-ho seems to be unimpressed and coldly walks away without a response. His friend Ju-ho then approaches our heroine and says that he'll be there if she needs any help. Turns out he's the class president and a very popular boy himself. Yeon-do is puzzled why such a sincere guy is hanging out with such a brat like Hyun-ho. On her way home, she goes to a local bar to retrieve a purse that her sister had left behind. But the moment she enters, she notices Ju-ho hanging out with a group of shady-looking boys. Confused, she quickly leaves and avoids any confrontation. The next day at school, she finds Ju-ho cleaning up the classroom in his usual obedient self. This makes her assume that she saw someone else at the bar. But just then, Ju-ho mentions that he saw her in the bar the previous day. He reveals that he's currently learning to do tattoos, and the bar happens to be their learning spot. He then asks Yeon-do to keep a secret, to which she agrees. The next morning, she arrives late for school and anxiously waits at the entrance. Yeon-do has never missed a class in her life, so she's desperate to get in. As luck would have it, she spots Hyun-ho walking by and she asks him for help. Our rowdy hero has a habit of climbing over the fence, so he takes her towards the back of the school. With little effort, he reaches the other side, but Yeon-do doesn't appear to be a good climber. Seeing her struggle, Hyun-ho kindly extends his hand to help her climb. He then advises her to leave her school bag here and pretend as if she was to walk out. Our heroine likes the idea and extends her hand for a high five, to which he awkwardly complies. This simple gesture unexpectedly stirs something in the bad boy's heart. Later, Yeon-do is unable to find her school bag, and this sends her into a state of panic. But Hyun-ho calms her down and lends her his notebook to take notes. He also promises to look for her bag later. In the evening, as Yeon-do talks with Ju-ho, she admits that she finds him intimidating. She explains how he's vastly different from them with his blonde hair, his way of wearing his school uniform, and his lack of interest in studies. At this moment, he arrives at the door with her lost bag in his hand. But seeing her close with Ju-ho, he feels jealous and abruptly storms off. The next day, rumors start circulating that Yeon-do is dating both the boys simultaneously. The girls in the class are jealous, wondering why she's so special. At that moment, Hyun-ho arrives in the class with a completely changed appearance as he's dyed his hair black and is wearing a well-fitted uniform. He hands over the lost bag to our heroine and walks off without saying a word. One of his good friends, Sol, stops him outside and tells him about the rumors. She reveals that everyone at school is talking about Yeon-do dating both him and Ju-ho. However, Hyun-ho asserts that he isn't dating her. Later, we see Yeon-do and Jun-ho alone in class. They seem to have become good friends and are talking about their upcoming exams. In the midst of their conversation, she offers him some water to drink. But before he can grab the bottle, Hyun-ho arrives out of nowhere and takes it from her. He claims that as her boyfriend, he should have it first. Ju-ho boldly challenges him to speak up if he has any issues. However, Hyun-ho plays innocent and simply states that he's her boyfriend. He then walks away from there, leaving them both in shock. Later that evening, Yeon-do and Yoon-ah stay late at school to practice math. They eventually part ways, and our heroine ends up running into her stalker, Jin-soo. He speaks to her as if they were old friends, and once again asks her out on a date. When she tries to leave, he grabs her by the hand and refuses to let go. Fortunately, Yoon-ah overhears the commotion and comes to her best friend's rescue. We then learn that Jin-soo's father is a police officer, so Yoon-ah threatens to talk to him. She tells Jin-soo that his behavior of constantly harassing her best friend is stalking. The latter begs not to involve his father and promises not to do anything like this again. He also apologizes to our heroine before quietly leaving. The next day during PE class, the teacher organizes the students into two teams and they begin to play dodgeball. When it's Seol's turn, she throws the ball directly at Yeon-do's face and knocks her to the ground. Turns out she's become tired of all the attention our heroine has been getting and feels neglected by her friends, who were once very close to her. Seol then angrily claims that they're welcome to befriend someone who constantly stuffs her face with bread. This hurtful comment makes Yeon-do self-conscious about her body, and she thinks she's gaining weight, even though she's not. At school, Yoon-ah scolds her for skipping lunch again, but our heroine remains adamant about not eating. Thankfully, Hyun-ho overhears their conversation and orders Yeon-do to bring him bread from the cafeteria. He asks her to eat a small portion, which she reluctantly does. Later, due to her poor calorie intake, Yeon-do faints. Later, she wakes up in the infirmary and finds Joo-ho by her side. She starts thanking him profusely. However, this dick doesn't reveal that it was actually Hyun-ho who carried her there. The discussion then shifts to tattoos, and Joo-ho shows her his recent designs. Among them, she notices a beautiful drawing of a flower. She asks about it, and Joo-ho reveals that it's Seol's birth flower, which he had drawn for her during their freshman year. He explains that she had no friends during junior high, apart from him and Hyun-ho. This explains why Seol is so angry these days, as she fears losing her friends to Yeon-do. Elsewhere, Jin-soo assembles a few boys from his school and gathers information about Yeon-do. His friend Sachan grows weary of his obsession and urges him to stop stalking the girl. However, Jin-soo reminds him of the favor his father had done for him in the past. This leaves Sachan with no choice but to help him. Meanwhile, Hyun-ho approaches our heroine and asks if she would like to have lunch with him. She accepts the invitation, and they decide to meet when classes are over. Later, while waiting for him, Yeon-do notices a group of boys from another high school at the gate. She overhears them talking about Hyun-ho's girlfriend, which happens to be Yeon-do herself. This makes her really scared as she believes the boys are here to kidnap her. But fortunately, Joo-ho shows up and escorts her through the gate. Sachan notices them but decides not to take action for now. He simply gathers his boys and leaves, promising to come back later. On the other hand, Hyun-ho continues to wait for Yeon-do. He feels betrayed when she doesn't show up, making him assume that she's simply playing games with him. As Yeon-do is heading home, she comes across Jin-soo along the way. Turns out he was waiting for her all this time. She questions how he knew her address, but he only mentions that his friend gave it to him. Jin-soo then asks her to date him and forcibly grabs her hand to keep her from leaving. Just as the situation escalates, Hyun-ho arrives. He lands a powerful punch on the stalker's face, knocking him to the ground. But the drama doesn't end there. Next to arrive is Sachan, who sneakily attacks our hero from behind. Jin-soo orders him to cause more damage, but this only enrages Sachan. He punches the stalker in the face, warning him not to order him around again. After Sachan leaves, Jin-soo feels humiliated, so he quickly runs away as well. The following day, our heroine decides to visit Hyun-ho to check on him. She helps him around the house and even prepares dinner for the two of them. Later, as Yeon-do is on her way home, she receives a call from Hyun-ho. In a sweet gesture, he insists that she stay online with him until she gets home safely. The following evening, Yeon-do once again stays late at school to study. When she goes to her locker, she learns that Joo-ho has left an umbrella for her. This makes her feel very special and she begins to smile, but her mood is instantly ruined when Seol arrives there and snatches the umbrella from her. She then belittles her heroine, asserting that someone like her could never be a part of their group. She also warns her to stay away from Joo-ho before walking away. Later, Yeon-do runs into Hyun-ho, who immediately senses that she's upset. He asks about the reason, and she claims that she forgot her umbrella. To her surprise, he brings out one in her favorite color, green, that he bought especially for her. They then walk together in the rain, talking about their lives and studies. Elsewhere, Joo-ho is on his way home when he spots the green umbrella he had left for Yeon-do. He calls out to her but realizes that she's busy talking to Jin-soo. It's only when she turns around that he learns that the girl is actually Sol. Enraged, he confronts her for giving Yeon-do's address to the stalker and asks her where she got the umbrella, but the bitch doesn't reply to any of those questions and instead admits that she hates Yeon-do for taking away her friends. Joo-ho calls her pathetic for her behavior and storms off, leaving her standing in the rain, heartbroken. The next day in class, Sol tells Joo-ho that she likes his cardigan so much that she bought one for herself. She playfully tugs on his arm and asks his opinion. However, he removes her hand and comments that it looks good on her with a blank expression. Feeling hurt, she begs him to be kind to her and promises to do as he says. He once again brings up the incident about Yeon-do's address, but she denies any involvement with it. At this moment, another student named Dong overhears their conversation and gets upset. He later approaches Joo-ho and confesses that he was the one who provided Jin-soo with the address. He didn't want to do it, but the stalker forced him. Learning the truth, Joo-ho rushes to Sol and sincerely apologizes for his mistaken assumption. He also apologizes for his recent cold behaviors towards her. This makes Sol very happy, and she invites him to a movie date on the weekend. However, Joo declines, claiming he already has plans with someone else. Later, he approaches our heroine and invites her to the same movie, but she doesn't seem to be interested in the film and rejects him. Later, Hyun-ho tries his luck as well. He approaches Yeon-do and asks her out to an unrated movie, which many people are unaware of. This time, she agrees and they end up having a great time over the weekend. It's pretty clear that the both of them have started to like each other. A few days later, the test results are announced and Hyun-ho receives a perfect score of 100. Yeon-do praises him for his outstanding results and encourages him to continue working hard. They then proceed to high-five, but the teacher interrupts them, accusing Hyun-ho of cheating on the test. Our hero insists that he studied and wrote all the answers himself, but the teacher remains skeptical. This pisses him off so much that he storms out of the room, and Joo-ho goes after him. A frustrated Hyun-ho then laments about how inadequate he feels and how he's always labeled as a troublemaker, while Joo-ho is called a superstar. Later, Yeon-do approaches Hyun-ho and advises him not to dwell on the opinions of others. She instead wants him to focus on those who truly care about him. A few days later, the school organizes a festival allowing students to dress up in costumes. Hyun-ho, Yeon-do, and Joo-ho wander around the place exploring different stalls and games. When she spots a tarot reading booth, she gets intrigued and immediately decides to give it a try. The boys are clearly non-believers, but they play along and follow her. The card reader then delves into matters of the heart, explaining that someone has feelings for Yeon-do, but is struggling to control them. As the final card is revealed, it becomes apparent that not just one, but two people have feelings for her. Hyun-ho and Joo-ho exchange surprised glances as they hear this. Later, a group of girls convince Yeon-do to volunteer on the third floor of the school. However, as soon as she reaches there, they lock her inside as a prank. The mean girls then inform Sol about the prank, hoping she will be pleased. But the latter appears to have changed her attitude and is disgusted by their actions. She immediately rushes to the boys to alert them of the situation. They then begin looking for her, and Hyun-ho manages to get to her first. With tears in her eyes, she questions what took him so long. Hyun-ho tries to console her and stays by her side throughout. While they're alone together, he seizes the opportunity to finally confess his feelings. At the same time, Joo-ho arrives and overhears their conversation from outside the locked door. This shocks him to the core, but he decides not to confront them. Sol also shows up sometime later and asks Joo-ho if he found them. However, he remains silent and leads her away without a response. In the meantime, Hyun-ho pours his heart out and confesses that he's been drawn to her for some time. He asks her to help him figure out his heart, to which Yeon-do responds with a smile, hinting that she reciprocates his feelings. The scene then shifts to a month later, where we see Hyun-ho spending time with Yeon-do, while Joo-ho is with Sol. It's clear that everyone in their group has found their person, whether a romantic relationship or platonic bonds.